Hey everyone, and welcome to How to Avoid Ageism in Your Job Search. My name is Jessica Hernandez, and I'm the president and CEO of Great Resumes Fast, an 8-time certified personal branding and career strategist, and a LinkedIn top voice for job search and careers. And today I'm here to talk to you about age-smart resume writing and job search techniques. And so today I hope to share some of my favorite ones with you because we all know that ageism is something Hernandez. I'm the president of Great Resumes Fast. I'm a career and personal branding strategist and a LinkedIn top voice for job search and careers. And today, my goal is to talk about how to avoid ageism in your job search. And I'm going to be doing that by writing and job search strategies. So hopefully we're back on. If I'm not frozen, will you just shoot me a comment in the comment section? I'm seeing all of them coming in. Okay, let's see. Carlos said I'm frozen. I just restarted, so I should be up and live. So let me know. All right, Debbie, you're telling me the video disappeared. Matthew said it's working on YouTube. So if you're on LinkedIn, let's see. Yeah, LinkedIn is saying it's frozen, but it seems to be working on YouTube and Facebook. So, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and, okay, Debbie said I'm all good and I'm back. All right, good. Whew, sorry about the technical difficulties. We're just going to keep right on rolling and hopefully everything will work. And if it doesn't, then I will repost it after the fact. So bear with me as we work through some of the technical glitches with StreamYard this afternoon. So, all right. I just want to start with a couple of quick research studies that I came across recently to just validate what so many of you are facing in your job search. So AARP did a research study last year that said 64% of workers are facing age discrimination on the job. And then another recent study this year in 2025 found that 75% of job seekers are facing ageism, and that number jumps up to 93% if you're looking for a director level role or above, which is so crazy to me that it just jumps up like that. Then there's a couple of other research surveys and studies that I want to share. This one particular really, I felt like spoke to what so many of you are seeing. I know that I hear this a lot from job seekers on LinkedIn who comment on my posts and who send me messages and just tell me what you're dealing with and what you're struggling with in your job search. But there was a study published in Collabora Psychology Journal, and they did a study where they sent out thousands of resumes. And the only difference between the resumes, they had the exact same skills, exact same experience and qualifications. The only difference was in half of the resumes, they used dates that showed that the worker was older. And in the other half of the resumes, they used dates and information that implied the workers were younger. Depending on how old the candidate was or perceived to be on their resume, the lower the odds that they would get callback rates. Starting at 40 to 49, you had a 38% lower callback rate. That jumps up to 62% for 50 and above. 62% lower odds of getting a callback just because there were age signals on the resume. And so that really kind of just shows the importance of the role that age signals play on your resume and how important it is to make sure that we're minimizing those age signals, which is why I call them age smart resume writing and job search strategies. A lot of times I'll hear from job seekers when I share job search strategies about, just being age smart and making sure that we're not putting the focus on age, but instead we're putting it on impact and value and experience. I'll hear things like, well, yeah, if I do that, when I get into the interview, they're going to see, or they're going to go to my LinkedIn profile and they're going to see, or the ATS is going to know my age. You have to input dates or things like that. So we're going to tackle all of that today because it's not one or the other. It's both. Like, you really need to be using age smart strategies on your resume writing and in your job search, and the techniques you use, the companies that you're targeting. There's so much that goes into it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in to all of that. So the first thing I want to do is share 3 resume writing strategies that are really important, that are going to help reduce some of the age bias that you're seeing when they're doing that initial review of your resume. One of the things that we want to do is trim your timeline on your resume. You really only want to be going back 10 or 15 years. Most recruiters will tell you that the last 10 to 15 years are the most relevant to your job search. Well, what if you have relevant experience from prior to that? That's fine. We can include that information. We're going to add an earlier career experience or a career trajectory section where we bring out the accomplishments in that section and we talk about the impact that you made or the value that you delivered, but we're not going to put the focus on the dates for that employment. You absolutely can summarize 7 years of experience and then list the accomplishments or list the specifics. Let's say you've got like 2 or 3 different roles that could go in that earlier career experience. Well, we're going to highlight 2 or 3 accomplishments in that section, and we're going to say 7+ years doing whatever that was. We're not going to say 1982 to 1988 or 1990 to 1997. We're not going to put the years on there. It's okay to say I've got 5+ years experience in project management in my earlier career without having to date that information. All right. So the second thing is, I see this on so many resumes that I review. People will lead with their years of experience, but the problem is years of experience in and of itself is not a differentiator for you. It is not going to help you stand out. What it does is puts the focus on age instead of relevance, instead of impact, and instead of value or outcomes or accomplishments. So don't lead in your resume with seasoned professional with 25 years of experience. Lead with who you are and what you do now. Don't lead with experienced executive with 30+ years experience, because that dates you and it puts all of the focus on your age and none of it on your contributions or your value. Instead, lead with who you are and what you do. Operations director who cuts costs 50% and delivers and increases delivery speed 20% for global manufacturers. Okay, so now we've put the focus on the job title. We've put the focus on the accomplishments and the results, and we haven't put any focus on how many years of experience you have. And I'm not saying that's not valuable. A lot of my clients are extremely proud of the 20, 25, 30+ years of experience they have, and you should be proud of that. It's just that in the type of culture and work environment that we have and the prevalence of age discrimination that is everywhere and widely acceptable. By the way, there's a WHO organization study that found that half of all people globally accept and have and hold ageist attitudes. Not only that, it's like the most acceptable form in society of stereotype or discrimination, which is crazy. And not only that, there's very little legal recourse that you have. And so my goal with these strategies is not to say like, oh, you need to hide age. No, it's not about hiding it. It's about putting that focus where it needs to be, which is on your value and your results and your impact and your contributions. So hear me out on that. All right. So don't put 20 plus or 30 plus years of experience in the first line on your resume. Because that frames you by years and not by impact. Okay, the third tip, modernize your education section on your resume. If you haven't already, remove dates on your education section, unless it was something that you recently achieved in the last 2 to 3 years. Don't even include a date on it because it doesn't matter. So avoid putting Bachelor's of Arts in English, George Washington University, 1997. Instead, just state Bachelor of Arts in English, George Washington University, Washington, D.C. No date. You don't need a date on that. A couple of other tips that I think are really super important resume writing. So the other three are like my top 3 must-have tips. Here's some other things that you want to consider that are going to modernize the appearance of your resume and reduce those age signals. You want to remove outdated technology. So let's say you haven't updated your resume in 10 or 15 years because you've been with the same company. Maybe you were hoping that you're going to be there till you retired. Things change. You haven't updated your resume. PageMaker. Think about all those old, obsolete technology programs that we don't use anymore. Take those off. And then make sure you include new technology that you've had professional development in or that you use on a day-to-day basis. AI familiarity with that is a huge one because we know from studies that if you list AI skills on your resume, you are 30 to 40% more likely to get the interview. So include those skills if you're familiar with those programs. All right, the next one is avoid outdated fonts like Times New Roman and Garamond. Those have been around for an exceptionally long time. So we want to make sure that we're not including those. And then we want to drop the AOL and Hotmail email addresses. So if you still have those, make sure you're removing those. And don't use objective statements on your resume also. All of those are what we call age signals. They're dating you on your resume. These strategies that I'm sharing with you, these strategies work because they put the focus on relevance and not age. They're going to remove those unnecessary age signals and they're going to position you as experienced and current, which are 2 things that we want. All right, let's talk about a couple of job search strategies. First, I want you to target companies that actually value your years of experience as opposed to looking at them as a liability. All right. And so what I mean by that is a lot of job seekers that I coach and that I talk to that are in my coaching programs or that we're working with one-on-one, they say things like, oh, I'm targeting Fortune 500 or I'm targeting a Fortune 100. Their target company list, the top 10 companies on their target company list are all Fortune 500s, Fortune 100 companies. And that's great if that is what you're looking for. The problem with that is that's who's doing all the laying off right now. All of those large companies are cutting costs, cutting their labor force, and tens of thousands of layoffs are coming out of those companies. Meanwhile, right now, small businesses made up in the last quarter 66%, the majority of all hires for the last quarter. And small business hiring right now, today, like this month in December, is up 9%. And so not only that, okay, so that's 2 things we have going for us. Like they had 66% of all hires last quarter. Their hiring is up 9%. Also, they make up 99% of the companies in the United States. Small to mid-sized businesses, 1,000 employees or less, make up 99% of all the companies in the United States. So if you're focused solely and exclusively on Fortune 500s, Fortune 100 companies, the big name companies that everyone knows and talks about at the dinner table, you're missing out on the majority of the hiring that's going on, the places that are hiring right now. And on top of that, small businesses, small to mid-sized companies are by nature the type of organizations that value your experience as an experienced worker because they don't have to invest thousands of dollars and months of time into training you. You literally walk in the door and can hit the ground running. And so to them, that then becomes an asset, a value add, because they probably don't have the budget or the time to invest in getting someone up to speed. So then all of your years of experience, your expertise, everything that you've done is seen as an asset as opposed to a liability. And that's what we want to do. So that's one job search strategy. Shift who you're looking at, shift what companies you're looking at. If you are absolutely set on it has to be this type of company, this size company, then start heading to their company website, their LinkedIn profile, their company page, and look for companies that have a diverse leadership or a diverse board. And so you're looking for organizations where there are already older workers in the leadership inside of those organizations so that you know, oh, there's age diversity inside of this organization. So that would be the caveat to that. The second job search technique is to bypass ATS if and when at all possible. And so you can do that by using LinkedIn to find the hiring manager, to find the decision maker, by tapping into your network to find a connection inside of the company. I know this happened to me recently, but I told this story on LinkedIn, so some of you may have heard it. But a couple of weeks ago, my husband runs into a former client of his at the grocery store. And she's like, oh, are you still doing or looking for a job doing blah, 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 blah. And he said, no, but that's what my wife does. And she's like, oh, well, I'm looking, for someone. Can you have her reach out to me? And so I told my husband, yeah, I would talk to her just to see, if there's anything I could do to help or a name I could pass along to her. And so she called me and we had a nice conversation. Not an interview conversation. Like she basically told me what she needed and then offered me the job. And there was no interview. She never reviewed my resume or anything like that. It was simply because my name was mentioned in the room. And I don't know, there are what I like to call, I'm not this type of person because I'm an introvert, but my husband and one of my really good friends are what I like to call natural connectors. They're the type of people that are going to mention your name in rooms that you're not in. And the thing is, when we're job searching, we think about, and I know the clients that I work with, their number one go-to when they're thinking about networking is their past coworkers and colleagues, their past vendors or clients or connections that they had at their last job. They're thinking in their mind professional connections. They're not thinking immediately their go-to is personal connections. And I really want to challenge you to think outside of the professional connection box and think about who you know inside your personal circle that is a natural connector that will mention your name in rooms that you're not in. One of my really great friends is also a hairstylist, and she is so well connected in our community. She's the type of person where if I was going to ever leave entrepreneurship and ever leave my company and go do something else, she's one of the first people I would call because she literally knows everyone in our entire area. And I could call her and say, hey, Evelyn, I've decided I'm making a career change. I want to explore opportunities and so, or with such and such company. Do you know someone that you could introduce me to? And then she's going to say, yeah, Jessica, absolutely, I do. Let me get you in contact with so-and-so, or let me get you in contact with this person, or, oh, I know someone at so-and-so company. Let me talk to them and I'll introduce you. And so what you have to do is find the natural connectors in your network. And that might not be professional connections. That might be someone in your church small group, someone on your kids, another parent from your kids' soccer team. It might be one of the other friends in your book club. It might be your hairstylist. It might be the barista that you see every morning at the local coffee shop or Starbucks. It might be your spouse. Look for those extroverted, natural connectors in your life and mention to them, hey, I'm exploring opportunities here, or I'm thinking about making a career change. Do you know anyone? And so I really encourage you to do that. And then the next thing that I want you to do is we're going to reframe this overqualified label that we hear, because there's a lot of coded language that's basically age discrimination. You hear it all the time, I'm sure. It's things like, you're overqualified, we're looking for someone more junior, we're not sure you'd be a culture fit, we're worried you might be a little bored in this role. It's things like that. I'm sure you guys have heard other things. If you want to share them in the comments, just so other viewers know, because there's hundreds of people that are either on here live or are going to watch this later. Share some in the comments some of the things that you've heard that represent that coded language that really translates to age discrimination. Because the more we bring it to light, then the less power and control it has, and the better we can proactively address it. And so one of those things that we often hear that is code words for age discrimination is you're overqualified. And basically what they mean when they say that is you'll leave when something better comes along, you'll be bored, you'll want more money than what we can afford, you won't take direction from younger managers. And so we want to combat that using language like or using language that directly addresses that myth. And so we want to say something like, I'm at a stage where my work-life balance and contributing to a stable company matter more than climbing a ladder. I've done the 70-hour weeks. Now I want to use my expertise to help so-and-so company achieve whatever that specific goal is while mentoring the next generation. This lets them know where your focus is. And of course, adapt this to what is authentic to you and to your specific situation, because I'm sure for some of you, there are goals that you have in your job search or your career or the next shift in your job search that specific script will not work for. Some of you guys might be career coasting. Some of you might be trying to keep a C-level role. Some of you might be ready to downshift in your career. Some of you might be looking for an Act 2 or Act 3 career. So I realize there's a lot of different parameters around your individual job search goals. So adapt that framework to fit what you need. The thing I want you to see is that you need to address the myth or the objection that they have in their head. You need to address that directly and head on. Which kind of leads me into my next point. Whatever the elephant in the room is, we're going to address that directly in the interview. And so you can even do this. This is a great strategy in your cover letter. If there's something that that specifically is going to be an issue, you want to address that directly in your cover letter. So if you are making a shift down in your career, make sure that you're telling them why the shift down. If you are applying for something that you have more experience for, but this is right for you right now in this season, why that is, address that. If there's a myth, like you think you're really close to retirement age and you think that's going to be an issue because companies assume that you're just biding your time until retirement, talk about your 5 to 10 year vision in your cover letter or in the interview, what you still want to accomplish. So in the interview, I like to bring it up first. And in the cover letter, if it's going to be a big obstacle, address it in the cover letter. I know you might be wondering if someone with my experience would be satisfied here. Let me share why this role is exactly what I'm looking for. And then share with them 2 or 3 reasons why that role is exactly what you're looking for right now. You can share specific aspects that excite you. You can talk about how you'll contribute without overstepping. You can talk about your commitment to the role, not just as a stepping stone, or why you're looking forward to staying there as opposed to leaving to go somewhere else. And so we want to make sure that we're addressing those things directly and head on, because anytime, in sales, if you're a salesperson, anytime you can enter the conversation that's happening in your prospect's mind and you can overcome those objections before they even have a chance to voice them. And sometimes they don't voice them, but if you can overcome those objections in their mind, then you're moving yourself further along in the hiring process. So here's a couple of myths that employers and companies believe, and we're going to bust them head on. We're going to talk about older workers can't, or don't want to learn new technology. So we combat that by sharing recent certifications, tools you've mastered, or how you've implemented new systems. And that's why it's so important that you include that updated technology on your resume. And right now we know AI is like the big one. So if you need to take a Coursera course or a LinkedIn Learning course or an online certification so that you can add that to your resume and your LinkedIn profile to show that you're staying up to date. I mentioned earlier, we're just marking time until retirement. So we're going to talk about our 5 to 10 year vision and what you still want to accomplish. Another myth, they won't fit our culture here. So demonstrate curiosity about their culture and share examples of how you've adapted to change. That's another way you can combat that myth. You can do that again on your cover letter or on your LinkedIn profile or in the interview. They're too expensive is another myth. So if money is not the issue for you and you're at the point where there's not a certain number or purpose-driven work is more important to you, focus on value, ROI, not your years of experience. Keep that in mind. Now, not all of these strategies and tips are going to apply to every single one of you, because each of you has a different goal in mind for your job search. Like I talked about earlier, you might be doing an Act 2 or Act 3 career. You might be moving from a consultant role back to a Fortune 500 and looking for more stability, or to a private sector job. You might be downsizing or career coasting, or you might be trying to career climb, depending on whether you've just been laid off or you're still trying to move up, whatever the situation. Take and adapt these strategies to your situation and know that not all of them will apply. It depends on what your goals are for your job search and your next career move. So let me just recap a couple of things and then I'll take questions. Resume fixes. We're going to trim your timeline to the last 10 or 15 years. We're going to remove the 25 or 30 plus years of experience line from your resume summary. We're going to lead with your current value, not historical experience, because we want to focus on relevance and impact, not on age. You're going to add recent certifications in a prominent place on your resume, and you're going to remove outdated, obsolete technology, update resume fonts on your resume, and use a modern resume design. Then for job search strategy shifts, we're going to focus on companies with less than 1,000 employees. If that can apply to you, I encourage you to use that strategy. We're going to reach out directly to hiring managers via email, not just LinkedIn. Hiring manager names, decision maker names are really easy to find if you use LinkedIn search filters. You can simply type in the job title and the company name. LinkedIn will give you the people's profile. Then you can try messaging them on LinkedIn. Right now, LinkedIn messages are kind of a toss-up whether you get a response or not. What I prefer right now is if you use a tool like Hunter.io or Mailscoop.io and you put in the company name and the person's name and it gives you their email address, and then you can email them directly. You're working to bypass the age filter. You're going to reach out to contacts inside the company, employees and decision makers, not just hiring managers. You're going to tap into your personal, not just your professional network. You're going to reach out to natural connectors inside of your network. We know that 48% of all hires last year came from employer referrals, and you are 5 times more likely to get the interview and the job offer if you have an employer referral. So we want to tap into that as an effective job search strategy, especially when you're battling ageism and ATS filters, and human review has unconscious bias that's leaking in and creeping into everything. So we're going to work around these things so that you can have a more effective job search. You're going to lead with solving their problems, not years of experience. You're going to do that on your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your cover letter, and in interviews. And you're going to address their age concerns proactively on your cover letter and in your interviews. These strategies work because they focus on age, not relevance. They remove the age signals from your resume. And, we'll go back to that age study that just having the age signals on your resume lowers the odds that you'll get a callback from 38 to 62%. So if we remove those age signals, then we're increasing the likelihood that we're going to get the callback. Then once we get the callback and we get the interview, we're going to proactively address any concerns, objections, or myths that they may have unconsciously or consciously about age when we're in the interview. Okay. All right. So that was a lot. I kind of just like blew through all that, but I wanted to make sure that I got all of those things um, out to you, as much information as possible, because I know that so many of you guys are struggling with it. I could not believe it when I sent out 2 months ago a survey to all of my readers, over 150,000 job seekers, and the number one challenge that they were facing was ageism. And I thought, man, this is so much more prevalent than what I had realized. And that's when I decided, okay, I need to be more vocal about teaching and equipping you with the strategies that you need, resume writing and job search strategies to overcome some of this stuff. So if you want to go ahead and put your questions in the comment section, I will try to get to a couple of those. I know we're kind of already over the 30-minute time limit. I had a lot to share, but I'm willing to stay on and answer some questions if you guys are. And then also two things I wanted to share. I'm putting it up right now. This is a URL to a Age Smart resume playbook that I created. It includes another 5 to 10 resume writing strategies and job search strategies that I didn't get to in today's LinkedIn Live. And if you want those so you can continue learning and employ some of these other techniques and methods, you can download it. It's free. It's just a quick PDF. It gives you 5 other age signals to eliminate from your resume. And then I wrote some emails so that I could go into a little more detail and further depth on these Age Smart job search techniques and strategies. So you'll get that. It's tinyurl.com/no age bias. And that's where you can sign up to get the playbook and the emails with the additional information if you're interested and you want to continue your learning in this area beyond what I've shared on the live today. Okay. All right, let's answer. Donna, how many frogs? How many frogs do we need to meet to find the right one? Rule? A lot, unfortunately, in the job market today. And that's one of the reasons why I was telling you to rely so heavily on the natural connectors in your life, because those people will introduce you to others that can help you get the next role. There's like this whole research study, body of research around weak ties, and it's usually not the person that you know, it's the person that they know that will get you your job. So just like my husband mentioned my name in the grocery store to one of his clients, and then I ended up with a job offer, one that, thankfully I didn't need at the time. But I love that example because it just goes to show that when your name is mentioned in rooms you're not in, it leads to wonderful things. All right, let's see. Diana said, I would also like for you to repeat how to get email addresses. Are you talking about this? The tinyurl.com/no age bias. That's the resume playbook and the emails where you get the additional information. That's where you can download that. Let's see. Even if I revamp my resume, don't employers have access to the old versions of my resume? I'm not sure how they would have access to that. You mean like if you applied and then you reapplied with an updated resume? Maybe, but a lot of them don't keep your information on file for more than 6 months. So it really would just depend on how long it's been since you applied to that role. If it's been a really long time, then absolutely they might, they probably don't have that. But if it's only been a short amount of time, then it might still be there. But that's okay. I mean, it's not that big of a deal because we're not trying to hide anything. We're just marketing ourselves more effectively, and we're removing those age signals. ATS, if you have to submit that way, any resume tips. If you have to submit that way, make sure that you don't have more than the last 10 or 15 years of experience listed on your resume. And if you do want to include past experience beyond that, include it, but include it without the dates. And don't include the education date. And then still work the connection angle. So I'll give you an example. I have a client that I coached and that she worked on her resume, she customized it, she applied to this role at a company through the ATS. She had spent, I don't know, too long customizing her resume. Sent it. The next morning by 6:15 a.m., she had a rejection email from the company. And she was perfect for the role, had all the qualifications. She reached out to a contact that she had in the company and she said, hey, I applied. I got the automated rejection. Would you be so kind to pass my resume along to the hiring manager? And her contact inside of the company said, absolutely, I will. He goes to the HR person, mentions her name and her application. And by that afternoon, they had called her and asked her to come in for an interview. I also have, I'll say this, to add to the ATS conversation. I have a client who is the vice president of technology for an ATS company. He actually creates the applicant tracking system and he has a team of recruiters that work for him. He still tells his recruiters to manually look at the applications because it is so easy for ATS to overscreen out applications or overscreen out. And I know there's so much misinformation about ATS out there and what it does and doesn't do. And a lot of times, if you're getting screened out, it's because there are screener questions on the application, not necessarily that you just uploaded your resume and that upload in and of itself screened your resume out. That's not necessarily the case. In most cases, it's the qualifying questions that go along with the application that if they aren't answered in a specific way, that screens your application out and you get the automated rejection. So it might be that there's a certain certification or a certain degree or a certain number of years of experience required for the role. And if you don't answer that screening question in exactly the right way that they've programmed that system to accept the answer, then it might boot your application out or send you the automated rejection. And that's where having that internal connection comes in. Nanette said, will there be a link to rewatch this webinar for anyone who might have missed any of this? Yes, you can come back to the same exact event page anytime and watch the replay. I'll also be sharing the link to this in the email that I shared here. So this URL where you can download the resume playbook, I'll also be sending out a link to rewatch the live today so that you'll have access to that if you want it. So if you sign up here, you'll get a link to the replay as well. All right, let's see what else. Ooh, this is such a great strategy. Adrian, I love this. I'm one of those lifelong learners. Also, use ChatGPT to plug in your experience and what you want to do next, and it'll give you recommendations for which courses to take. I'm a lifelong learner too, hence all of the books over here, but I'm also currently enrolled in like 3 different classes, and I love Perplexity for research. Perplexity is another AI. It's not really a chatbot AI like ChatGPT or Claude, but you can actually use it to do in-depth research. And so that was how I found all of this amazing ageism research, where the stats came from that I shared with you. You guys, this is like a ridiculous amount, pages and pages of research studies. So you can pull academic journals and research and all kinds of stuff. You can use it to find target companies. So you could log on to Perplexity and say, hey, Perplexity, give me a list of small businesses, small to mid-sized companies in Denver, Colorado, that are medical device manufacturers or who might be hiring project managers. And then Perplexity will scour the internet for you and give you a list. And that's the best way to go around your job search, because you probably haven't heard of all the different small companies, small businesses that are in your area that do whatever your line of work is. And so definitely lean on those tools to help you discover where you can work and where the hiring is happening. What strategies do you recommend for highlighting experiences and skills in a way that avoids potential age bias during the job search? I shared a lot of those already, making sure that we're focusing on value and impact and not how many years we've been doing something. And if you do need to list how many years you've been doing something, you don't have to go to the extreme and say, I have 25 years or 30 years of experience. You can say 5+ years or 7+ years of experience. And so then we're minimizing those age signals on our resume. And this is really, really interesting. Two other age signals, which I came across recently. On your resume, the parentheses around area code on your phone number is a holdover from when you didn't actually need to add an area code like forever ago. But now we know everyone needs an area code because there's so many numbers. And so one of the strategies that I recently came across was removing the parentheses and just using a dot or a dash for those, because that's actually an old-timey, if that's the right word you want to use, holdover from the past. Kind of like double spacing on a typewriter. You don't double space your lines on your resume because that's a holdover from back in the day when we learned how to use a typewriter. So it's just little things like that you don't think about all the time that actually are age signals on a resume. So. Why are some employers opposed to hiring individuals above a certain age? Not because they are overqualified in some way, but just too old. Because there is this perception in our society and in our culture that once you are a certain age, that you are sickly, decrepit, you don't have enough energy, you're not willing to change, you're an old curmudgeon. Basically, it's a stereotype, it's a bias. And it's there. I hate that it's there. It's like one of the most acceptable forms, which I even hate to use the word acceptable. I don't think it's acceptable or right. I think it's outrageous and ridiculous, but it's there as a society, like globally. When I was doing all the research that I was telling you about before, it's so prevalent. It just is. Like, it just is. It exists. And I was reading this book the other day from an employment lawyer who wrote about how to overcome age bias in the workplace. Like, she does lawsuits against this. And she was saying that the amount of suits that have complaints to the EEOC about age discrimination have skyrocketed in recent years. Yet it's the one form of discrimination that they pursued legally the least, because it has the least amount of legal protections or legal language for lawyers to even be able to pursue it in a court of law, which I know is like way in the weeds from what we're talking about today. But you can't even really, unless it's like super blatant, you can't even have any legal recourse against it. So it's just like I said earlier from that WHO organization study. It's just prevalent. It's out there. It's a globally held stereotype, as ridiculous as it is. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but my dad is in his mid 70s and he still works as a consultant for the organization that bought his prior company. So he didn't even like retire. He's in his mid 70s and he's still working. And that company like relies on his experience. They're a younger organization. and they rely on his expertise and his wisdom. So there are companies out there that are like that, that will appreciate and value your wisdom, your experience, the fact that you've been through several economic downturns, the fact that you've walked through some really hard, challenging stuff. It just takes some time. Like the other LinkedIn user said, sometimes you got to kiss a lot of frogs to get to the right company. Ooh, Michelle, this is a great question. Okay. I mentioned not including more than 15 years on your resume. What if you've been at the same company for 19 years? In your case, this is what we're going to do. You are going to, instead of putting your total years on the same line on your resume, so let's say you have the company name. I'm just going to give you an example, like Medtronic. You work for Medtronic. You were a project manager or a pharmaceutical sales rep, medical device sales rep for Medtronic would be more accurate. Let's say you were a medical device sales rep for Medtronic. Next to that on your resume, you would typically have 2000 to 2019. Let's just use those dates for the sake of simplicity. Instead, what you're going to do is break down the different job titles you've had in those 19 years, and you're going to date the job titles instead of the overall jobs, but you're only going to date the last 10 years. And then underneath that, you're going to group together the 5 to 9 years, depending on what works best for your individual situation, in like an earlier career experience section. And so you would put like other roles included or past career trajectory included. And then you might list those titles. And then you're going to list 2 or 3 accomplishments that you had that are relevant from those roles, but you're not going to date that information. You're just going to include the job titles and the information. You're only going to add dates for the last like 10 to 15 years of roles that you had within that specific company. And that's going to help eliminate that. I have some clients that I've worked with that have jobs, like they were at the same company since like 1982 or 1985. And so this is a great way to break down only the most recent roles that you've held within that organization. Okay, let's see. How can I address that I'm more than capable of learning new technologies on my resume, LinkedIn profile, and during the interview? So one way that you do that is by including some of the new things that you've learned and the dates to go along with those certifications in your professional development section. If there's a recent certification that you've taken that is extremely relevant to the type of work that you want to do now, I would give that even more prominence on your resume and include it in the top section, and you can date that. All right. Okay, so Fred said, I understand why people think older people are slow and not motivated. That's not me. I'm more active and productive. How to leverage and address that. I would use language that communicates your energy, your eagerness, and your enthusiasm. So on your resume and your LinkedIn profile and your cover letter, I'm eager to, I'm enthusiastic, or I'm excited about. Use language like that on your cover letter and your LinkedIn profile to help communicate that you are active, you're productive, you're excited. Those things matter. The language you use on your resume matters. Something we didn't really have time to get into today. There's so much strategy that goes into writing a resume and communicating the type of story that you want to communicate. There's a reason why we might not bold dates, or we might bold a job title, but not bold a company name, or why we might bold a certification, or add shadowing or shading, or use a specific style font, or if we have a 3-page resume, making sure that we're including a ton of white space. One of my mentors early on in my career said, nothing in resume writing is arbitrary. And it's not, especially with the challenges that you're facing, your years of experience. Everything we're doing on your resume is very strategic, very purposeful to communicate a certain message about your experience, your value, and what it is that you want to do next. So I didn't really talk about this, but we do offer one-on-one resume writing. If that's something that you're interested in, you're welcome to message me, or there's a link to book an appointment so that we can explore if it's a mutual fit. If this is something where you feel like it's not something that you want to tackle, you prefer to have help, reach out to me. But otherwise, I really recommend checking out the download that I shared, because there's even more information on that will help you with your resume and your LinkedIn profile and your job search. All right, let me see if there are any other questions. Yeah, Donna, it's just bias. Yep, yep, yep. If your last job lasted 14 years, do you disregard everything else? If there's other information before that that's relevant to what your goals are now in your job search, then I would include that in an earlier experience section, but don't date that section. Just include a couple of highlights of accomplishments and impact that you had during that time. Michael kind of asked something similar. If there are roles before 15 years that are relevant, can we just list the company and title? I would not list just the company and title. I would list a couple of accomplishments that are relevant. And again, you don't have to date that information. All right. Whew, that's a lot. Okay. I'm going to hang around in the comments section for a little bit and try to get to some of these questions that I wasn't able to answer live on the call today. But again, I really hope this has been helpful to you, that you've learned something new that you can take and apply to your resume, that you can take and apply to your job search. If you want to keep learning more about the age signals that we unintentionally give off in our resume and in our job search, or how to address these myths more effectively and to address them head on, I encourage you to download my Age Smart Resume Playbook. I'm going to be sending out emails that are specific to those of you who are facing the challenge of ageism in your job search. We're going to be talking a lot about how to address those things head on. So here's the URL for that, tinyurl.com/no age bias. Go there, download it. If you have additional questions that I didn't get to in the live today, leave them in the comments. And one last ask, if you'll do me a favor, if you enjoyed today's live session, would you please share this on your LinkedIn feed? I know there are so many people that need to hear this, that need to see it, that need the advice, the equipping, the resources. So if you'll just share it with maybe like 1 or 2 tips that really stood out to you, that would help me tremendously. It would help the other job seekers in your network to get the information that they need to help them in their job search. And the more we can spread the tips, the resources, and the techniques, the more people that we can help get through so that they're not stuck too. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and learning from me. One of my favorite things to do is equip job seekers with the tools and techniques that they need in their job search. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and I can't wait to see you until next time. And if I don't see you before, Merry Christmas. I'll talk to you later.